Adam. 7 Sons Book 1. Kirsten Osbourne. Chapter 1. Adam McClain sat down across from the new boy coming to live at the boys' ranch. He could feel the anger flowing toward him from his young charge. He glanced at his cheat sheet for the boy's name. Ah, there it was. Nicholas. Welcome to the ranch. Nicholas slumped down in his chair, a look of anger filling his face. Adam felt the fury hit him in the face like a ball of pure energy. I don't want to be here. Few boys do, until they've been here for a while and realize what an awesome place they've landed in. Adam gave the boy his complete attention. Tell me about Nicholas. It's Nick. Adam made a quick note so his brothers wouldn't make the same mistake he had. All right, then. Tell me about Nick. He sat still, feeling fear coming from Nick. Start with how old you are and where you're from. There's no need to be afraid of me. As soon as he mentioned being afraid, he felt pride coming from the young man. As an empath, Adam was the counselor at the McClain Boys Ranch. Sometimes he loved it, but other times it was hard to feel all the emotions hitting him at once. I'm 14. I'm from Dallas. I want to go home. Adam sat back in his chair, steepling his hands under his chin. He'd heard the same words hundreds of times. At 35, he was the oldest of 7 children. His mother had a fascination with 7 brides for 7 brothers, hence the name. His younger brothers were Benjamin, Caleb, Daniel, Ephraim, Frank, and Gideon. They'd been teased about their names a lot, but truth be told, it made him feel like part of a set, which pleased him. Do you want to tell me why you're here? The facts were laid out before Adam. Nicholas had stolen his stepfather's car to go for a joyride. Added shoplifting, smoking, drinking, and way too many fights with other boys at school, and his parents had decided to send him away. Nick shrugged, responding exactly how Adam expected him to. No one wants me to have fun. Adam shrugged. You'll find you're allowed to have fun here. After your schoolwork and chores are done. My name is Adam McClain. You'll come in and talk to me a couple of times a week for a while. We'll become good friends. You're a shrink. You could say that. I'm a trained youth psychiatrist. The real thing I'm here to do is talk to you about your troubles. We'll start that tomorrow. First, though, I'm going to walk you to your cabin so you can meet the 5 boys you're going to share a home with. Adam glanced down at Nick's file again. You'll be starting out in a cabin with 2 of my brothers, Caleb and Benjamin. You'll be using our first names when you address us, because there are too many Mr. McClains to keep up with. We wouldn't know who you were talking to. The kid didn't meet Adam's eyes. I'm ready. Good. Get your things, and we'll go for a little walk. Adam chatted easily with the boy as he walked out of the office and across the ranch with him. The stables are to your right. You'll be assigned a mount that you will tend while you're here. My brother, Ephraim, is in charge of the stable, and all the other animals here on the ranch. A horse? Nick's eyes brightened, and Adam felt a rush of happiness that was quickly masked. You don't expect me to start roping cows, do you? That's something you'll learn to do here. You came just a week too late. We had our annual fundraiser over the weekend. We have rides, games, good food, and lots of fun stuff. Adam pointed off to an area that had been trampled by thousands of feet just a couple of days before. We hold the fundraiser over there. Figures I'd miss it. Nick kicked at a clump of grass. It stinks here. Adam grinned. That's the smell of cow manure. You'll get used to it. You might even grow to not mind it so much. The boy would be there for 4 years. His parents had written him off and completely given up custody of him. While you're here, you'll learn to work with the cattle, ride horses, mend fences, and generally work hard. You'll go to school every day, and when you get home, you'll work around the ranch. It's a good life. Did you get sent here when you were a boy? Nick asked, seeming to like the idea of the man beside him having had to go to a boys' ranch as well. Nope. I've lived here since I was born. I refer to a lot of men as my brothers, because they were raised here along with me. I am the oldest of 7 brothers by birth, but there are at least 100 men I refer to as brother. I'm not going to call any of the boys here my brothers. They're just random idiots I'm being forced to live with. Nick looked at everything around him, soaking up the ranch. Adam could feel the excitement radiating off of him. Adam grinned. He knew the boy would feel differently soon. He stopped in front of a cabin. In truth, the building was more of a house. There were 4 bedrooms. His brothers shared one, and each of the boys shared with one other. This will be your home for a while. Nick wrinkled his nose. Do I have to share a room? Yup. You'll share a room with Hunter. He's 14, and he came here from San Antonio. Adam strode toward the back of the house, opening a door. This will be your room. Hunter was here first, so he gets his choice of beds. Looks like he's in the one on the left. I'll get you some linens, and stay here with you while you make your bed and unpack. Make my bed? There's not someone here who can do that for me? Adam pulled out a chair that was in front of one of the desks in the room. The furniture was comfortable, but not fancy. There were 2 twin beds, 2 chests of drawers, and 2 desks with chairs. Nothing else. You'll find that here on the ranch, you will be required to take care of yourself. What does that mean? Adam had dealt with many boys like Nicholas in the years he'd been working on the ranch. It means you will make your own bed every day. You will do your own dishes. You'll be expected to take a turn at cooking. Your mother doesn't live here, Nick. You are responsible for you. Nick frowned. I'll leave. Even as he said the words, Adam felt fear wash over him. You won't leave. You'll love it here. It's just going to take a little while. No one can make me love it. But Nick felt hope, and Adam knew it. No, no one can make you love it. You'll have to do that yourself. I promise though, if you'll give us a chance, you will love it. I would be willing to bet money that in a year, you'll love this place more than you ever loved living in Dallas. Nick sat down on his bed, a frown on his face. No, I won't. I've been doing this a long time, Nick. We always succeed in making boys love the ranch. Period. Adam walked to the closet there in the room and opened it, taking down a set of sheets. Go ahead and make up your bed. I'll stay with you until you're done, and then I'll walk you down to your housemates. Nick glared at Adam, obviously not wanting to follow instructions, but he stood and took the sheets. As he struggled to put the sheets on his bed, Adam gave light tips. Make sure you put it over both of the corners at the top before you move on to the bottom. That's right. Good job. When the bed was made, Nick looked at Adam with pride. He'd obviously never made a bed before, but he did it right the first try. It's done. Yes, it is. Good job. Now put your clothes away. Adam pointed to one of the chests. That one is yours. Get your stuff in it. He sat down again, waiting for the boy to do as instructed. Always on one of the first few days, the new boys would try to make a run for it. Or they would flat refuse to do something. Nick was younger than most of the boys who came to the ranch, so Adam hoped he'd do what was right. Nick picked up his things and slowly put them into the drawers. He hadn't brought much, which didn't surprise Adam. They relied on donations from the church in town for clothes for the boys. Usually what the boys brought wasn't particularly suited to ranch life, so their wardrobe was slowly changed anyway. When he'd finished, Adam led him out of the cabin and toward the hay field. This month was the month Benjamin and Caleb had this particular group of boys, so they were working in the field, adding fertilizer to make it ready for planting again in the spring. Benjamin had the power to make plants grow at a tremendous speed. Adam and his brothers were the 7 sons of a 7th son. Each generation, the 7th son had some sort of power, but this generation was the 7th. And each 7th generation brought a group of men who each had a power. Gideon had every power his brothers had, but all were to a lesser degree. Caleb's power was sensing danger, so it was always good to start the new boys with him. It didn't always work out that way, but Adam was pleased when it did. Your housemates are working on fertilizing the hay field. You'll be joining them. I told you my brothers Benjamin and Caleb will be your house leaders for this month and next. The leaders shift out every 2 months, so you get to learn skills from each of us. What about you? Adam shrugged. I'm the oldest, so I stay in the big house where my parents still live. Truly, he couldn't spend a night amongst the boys. They'd tried it at one point, but the angsty emotions of the teenage years had been too much for his empathic powers. That's dumb. Why is that dumb? I also have a degree in psychiatry, so I'm a doctor. That affords me special privileges. None of your brothers are doctors? Actually, both Daniel and Ephraim are. Daniel's the 4th brother. He's a regular old-fashioned general practitioner. Then there's Ephraim. He's the 3rd to the youngest. He's a veterinarian. An animal doctor? Nick shrugged. Animal doctors aren't the same as people doctors. No, they're not. But they're every bit as important. Adam felt the excitement from the boy. Do you like animals? I don't know. I never had one. You've never had a pet? Adam asked, not at all surprised. The cat just had kittens. Do you want to claim one? Nick looked at him with shock in his eyes. You'd let me do that? I'm a troublemaker. Adam shook his head. You used to be a troublemaker. Now you're going to be a productive, working member of our ranch. You'll see. I'll take you to pick one out when you come to see me tomorrow. Why am I getting my head shrunk so much? Because you're new here, and I need to get to know you. Adam stopped when they were within earshot of his brothers. It's not something to be ashamed of here. All the boys see me every day for their first week. And then gradually less. I see every boy on the ranch at least once a week. How many boys are here? Right now we have 30. We're at maximum capacity with you. We had room because one of our recent graduates moved out last month. Adam raised a hand to signal Caleb, who hurried over. Caleb, this is Nick. He's here from Dallas. He's going to share a room with Hunter. He's made up his bed and put his things away. The boys who were working at shoveling manure onto the field from a wheelbarrow all stopped, looking at them. Hey, Adam! Jose yelled. Jose was 16, and a permanent resident of the ranch. His parents had sent him there when they'd found out about his drug abuse. Adam raised a hand in greeting. How's it going? Good. I made 100 on my history test today. Great job. Adam was proud of how far Jose had come since he'd been left there 2 years before. He took a personal interest in every one of the boys, and they took an interest in him as well. Caleb grinned at Nick. Welcome to the ranch. We're glad to have you. Nick wrinkled his nose. So I can help shovel bull air, poop? Yup. We need the help getting this field ready for spring. Benjamin says cow poop is the absolute best fertilizer there is, and no one knows as much about growing plants as Benjamin does. Whatever. Benjamin waved Nick and Adam over. We're spreading the manure today. They had a manure spreader, but they preferred to teach the boys how to do hard work, rather than letting machines do it. Nick walked over to Benjamin, who towered over him by half a foot. I didn't bring a shovel. That's all right. You can use mine. Benjamin handed the boy his shovel and instructed him on the best place to start working. Nick moved toward the other boys with trepidation. Hunter hurried toward him. You're going to share a room with me. I know, because all the other beds are full. You'll love it here. It takes a little time to get used to it, but you'll always be treated with respect and love. Nick shrugged. Whatever. Adam stayed with his brothers. I emailed you both the case history. He was sent here after stealing a car. He's got shoplifting, fighting, drugs, and drinking on his record. His parents have completely washed their hands of him, signed away rights. Benjamin frowned. I hate that for him, but love it for us. We'll get to keep him and mold him into the man he's capable of being. In their lifetimes, they'd never failed to turn a boy at the ranch into a productive member of society. Caleb looked over at Nick. I always feel bad for the ones whose parents simply don't want them anymore. If they sent them here for a year to get them acting right and took them back, it might be better for them. Adam shook his head. You know it's better if they're left with us until they're grown. Always has been. He felt his pocket vibrate and pulled his phone out. This is Adam. Adam, I need you at the house as soon as you can get here. We have something to discuss. Peter McClain was still the acting head of the ranch, though the responsibilities were slowly being taken over by his sons. I'm on my way, Dad. Adam ended the call and rubbed the back of his neck. Dad needs me for something. He sounded a bit upset. Really? Caleb asked. Their dad was never upset. I might have read between the lines a little, Adam said with a grin. See you tomorrow. Email me after the boys leave for school to let me know how he does tonight. Will do. Caleb watched as his brother hurried away. Adam rushed toward the main ranch house. He was tired. It had been a long day. As the person in charge of intake there on the ranch, a day when a new boy arrived was always a busy one. They were registered foster care providers for up to 50 boys at once, though they chose to only take in 30 at a time, so they could give each individual attention. They took boys from the ages of 12 to 17, but usually they didn't come before 14. When he reached the house, he opened the door, calling, Dad. I'm back. His mother came out of the kitchen, putting her hands on her hips. Lillian McClain didn't stand for loud, boisterous voices in her home. Adam, you know better. Sorry, Mom. Dad called me back, and it sounded like it was an emergency. He's in his office. Thanks. Adam hurried off to his dad's office, hating that his mother still felt the need to scold him. He was 35. He knocked once on his dad's door and then turned the doorknob. Hey, Dad. Adam, sit. I got a call from Lois Rendon this morning. She's decided to retire. Retire? Lois was the woman who organized and ran the fundraiser every year. Do we need to keep the fundraiser going? His dad nodded, scrubbing his face with his hands. You know as well as I do, we don't want people to know where the money really comes from. We need to do the fundraiser so we can keep this ranch going with no suspicion. Do you want me to take over the fundraiser? Adam couldn't imagine finding the time for that, but he'd do it if he needed to. No, you do enough around here. We need to hire someone else. I'm going to contact an employment agency to find someone for us. I do want you to interview, though, because you'll be the person working closest with them. Adam nodded. In addition to his work counseling the boys, he was in charge of personnel on the ranch. I'll do that. If you can, get the interview set for Monday. I can take all day and just interview. Well, except for Nick. The new boy will need me every day for a while, I think. That sounds good. I'll do my best. Anything else? Adam asked. His father had the power to catch glimpses of the future. He'd be able to bring in the right person with no problem. Not now. Just be sure to watch Nick. I don't think he's going to hurt anyone else, but I worry he might be self-destructive. I sensed that in him as well. I'll do everything I can. Adam stood, heading upstairs to shower before dinner. Chapter 2. Tiffani Simpson drove her little Ford Fiesta the hour and a half from San Antonio to Bagley. She hadn't been super interested in the job someone had pointed out, but she was a firm believer in fate. She'd seen the listing, found out she was being laid off, and read something about the ranch all in one day. It seemed to her she was meant to go to Bagley and work as a fundraising coordinator for the boys' ranch there. She pulled into the driveway, surprised at the sheer length of it. Parking in front of the main house as she'd been instructed, she got out of the car, taking a minute to smooth her hair. It wasn't every day that she drove an hour and a half for a job interview. She walked to the house and knocked, waiting nervously for someone to come to the door. When the door opened, it was a middle-aged gentleman with salt and pepper hair and blue eyes. The kind of eyes that pierced the soul. "Hi, I'm Tiffani Simpson. Are you Adam McClain?" The man smiled, shaking his head. "Adam is my oldest son. Come in, and I'll call him over." He led her to a small office. "Can I get you something to drink while you wait?" "I'd love some ice water." "Lots of ice." Tiffany's worst habit was crunching on ice, and she needed to do it more when she was nervous, like today. "I'll be right back." The door closed behind him, and Tiffani wandered over to the window, looking out at the ranch. Doing a fundraiser here would actually be enjoyable. She believed in what these people were doing, and she loved the idea of helping kids who were in the foster care system. The door opened behind her, and she turned, smiling as she reached for her ice. Instead, she saw a man with the same eyes as Mr. McClain, but he was a great deal younger. And handsome. Much too handsome for her heart rate. "I'm Tiffani Simpson. Adam McClain. My dad is getting you some ice water. Would you like to sit down?" Tiffani shook her head. "I'd rather stand for a minute or two. I sat the whole way here." "Where do you live, Miss Simpson?" "San Antonio." "If you were to get the job, would you relocate? Or would you continue to make the drive?" Tiffani thought about his question for a minute. "I'd relocate if I could find a good place to live. We have some cabins for rent here on the ranch, if you'd care to look at them after the interview. We've found that when people begin to work for us, we want them close at hand so they can see how the ranch runs." "I'd like that." The door opened behind her, and Tiffani accepted the water from his father. "So what can you tell me about fundraising?" "I've been a fundraiser for 3 different nonprofit agencies. I read an article about your fundraising event the ranch puts on every year in a magazine, and I love the idea of putting my ideas to work for you." Adam leaned back in his chair, watching her. "What ideas do you have?" "I know you do rides, a small rodeo, food, and games as part of your fair. What if you had people make some quilts you could auction off? Or what if you had the boys put on some sort of show?" "I like the quilt idea. I'm not sure how I'd feel about having the boys perform for money." Adam sensed that her ideas were all coming from her heart. She was very enthusiastic about their cause. "How soon could you start?" His father had told him she was the one to hire, but he'd needed to sense her emotions about the job for himself. "My last day at my current job is Monday. If you could show me the cabin you have in mind for me, I could start as early as Wednesday." "Your fundraiser is only once a year, correct?" "Yes, but we've worked with the same woman for longer than I've been alive. Hiring someone new and getting them up to speed in time for the fundraiser might be a difficult thing. I assure you I'm a quick learner, especially when I feel strongly about something." Adam got to his feet, offering his hand. "Welcome to the team, Miss Simpson." Tiffani grinned widely. "Thank you. And please, call me Tiffani. You'll need to call me Adam." There are a lot of Mr. McClains running around this ranch. The article I read said that you have 6 brothers. I can't imagine coming from a family of that size. How many siblings do you have? Adam started walking toward the door, determined to give her the ranch tour. None. My father died when I was 2, and my mother never remarried. I always loved the idea of a big family. Adam frowned. Maybe he should introduce her to Gideon and forget all about his attraction to her. Gideon was guaranteed to have 7 sons. He would probably have several, but there were no guarantees with him. Of course, he could provide her with daughters, and his brother couldn't. As they walked across the ranch, he pointed out the stables, the barn, the fields, and the boys' houses. He stopped in front of a small cabin. This is the house we have that you could rent. He opened the door and led her inside. The cabin had originally been built more than 100 years before by the boys who were the first foster kids there. It had been updated through the years to include electricity and indoor plumbing, but it still wasn't the most luxurious place on earth. It's certainly rustic. He laughed. It is. You'll find it has all the modern conveniences, though. All the appliances are included, and there's a hot tub at the main house you'd be welcome to use. A hot tub? Sold. He smiled. It'll be nice to have you on board, Tiffani. I'll be back on Tuesday with all my things. I don't have a lot, so it shouldn't be a big deal to move in. If you'll give me a call about 30 minutes before you arrive, I'll arrange for you to have help unloading your vehicle. Adam leaned against the door jamb, studying her. Will you move alone? If you're asking if I have anyone I live with, the answer is no. I'm too married to my job to be in a relationship, I'm afraid. I hope you'll put just as much enthusiasm and love into working here at the ranch, then. Tiffani smiled. I don't seem to know any other way to be. It's 100% or nothing in my world. That's what we need around here. Adam opened the door and led her outside. I'll walk you to your car. Thank you. I'm not sure I could find it at this point. He grinned. Let's stop by my office, and I can give you a map of the property. You'll be all over it. He eyed her skirt and heels. I hope you own some good old-fashioned cowboy boots. Wearing that will just get your clothes ruined. I'll be sure to wear something more appropriate when I work here. Tiffani looked at him, a little worried about how attracted she was to this man. He'd be her boss, and office romances never ended well. Adam felt the wave of attraction come from her and hid a smile. He felt the same. When you get here, I'll show you around town. There's a church in Bagley that has acted as our benefactors for years. You'll need to be introduced to the pastor and his staff. Are you asking me out, Adam? Would you go if I said yes? She laughed softly. Not yet, but give me a little while to get my bearings. Then I just might do it. As much as she was against dating someone she worked with, there was something special about him. She couldn't pass up the opportunity to get to know him better. His eyes, the exact same as his father's, sent her pulse racing. Yes, getting to know Adam McClain was an exciting and scary prospect all in one. Asterisk. Tiffani was there by late Tuesday afternoon. She called 30 minutes before she reached the ranch as promised. She drove slowly through the grounds, following the map Adam had given her. When she found the house she'd agreed to rent, she found 30 boys waiting out front for her. She slipped from her car, surprised. What are all of you doing here? We're going to unpack your truck for you. The boy who answered looked about 17, and he had a big grin on his face. She'd borrowed a pickup truck from a friend. She'd take it back the next weekend. I'll sure let you. I don't exactly love lugging boxes. She was exhausted. She'd finished up at her other job, packing boxes every night. It was a good thing she didn't have a lot to move. Start carrying them in, boys. Tiffani, if you would go inside and direct them where to take each box, that would be a huge help. Adam smiled at her as he handed her a key to the door. She felt a spark rush through her body as she looked at his smile. What was it about him that made her heart beat faster? I'll do that. She took the key and unlocked the door, going inside. For the next 20 minutes, the boys carried in things. She had them put them in various rooms. The cabin was furnished, so she'd been able to just bring her boxes of stuff. When they'd brought in the last box, she thanked them all profusely, shutting the door as they left. She leaned back against the door with an exhausted sigh, only to find Adam standing in her house, looking at her. I thought you'd gone. Obviously. You look tired. Why don't I stay and help you unpack? For a moment, she was tempted, but she really wanted to put everything where she wanted it. She'd shared a house with a friend in San Antonio, but all the furnishings and everything had belonged to the friend. She'd had no say in how things were set up. Here she had every right to move anything she wanted. I'm probably just going to unpack the essentials and go to sleep. I'll do a little every night until I'm done. You're invited to the house for supper tonight if you're interested. She wanted to say no, because she really was tired, but she couldn't turn down the invitation. She knew his parents lived in the main house, and telling them no could be career suicide. I'd like that. He grinned at her, making her stomach flutter wildly. Be there at 6, then. Tiffani glanced at the clock and saw that it was after 5. She would have just enough time to shower and walk to the house. I'll be there. Thank you for inviting me. You'll have to thank my mother. I was just passing along the invitation. I'll do that, then. She stood there awkwardly for a moment. I need a shower if I'm going to meet your mother. He nodded, heading for the door. I need to check in on one of the boys before dinner anyway. What exactly do you do here, Adam? I manage the ranch, and I'm the counselor for the boys. If they have any kind of trouble, they always run to me. She thought about his words while she showered. She'd read that one of the men was a psychiatrist, and she was more than a little intimidated by the idea of it being Adam. Why psychiatrists intimidated her, she didn't know, but the idea of Adam being one really did. She got to the house just before 6 and knocked on the door, hiding her yawn behind her hand. A middle-aged woman came to the door, smiling broadly. You must be Tiffani. Welcome to the family. Tiffani did her best not to react to the strange words. She was working there. Did they consider that made her part of the family? Thank you, Mrs. McClain. Oh, with all the McClains on this ranch and in town, you really need to use my first name. I'm Lillian. It's nice to meet you, Lillian. You have a beautiful home. She smiled. It's been in the family for hundreds of years. Members of my husband's family fought and died in the Texas Revolution. That's fascinating. Oh, that's not even the tip of the iceberg with this family. I have a feeling you're going to love it here. Are you settling in all right? Lillian led her to the dining room where everything was already on the table for supper. I am. That little cabin is just the right size for me. I think I'm going to like it here a great deal. Adam stepped in from another room. I'm glad to hear that. We like the idea of you staying for as long as possible. When his eyes met hers, she felt a shudder run through her body. He had the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. There was something absolutely mesmerizing about them. Thank you, Adam. Tiffani tore her eyes from his and looked at the food on the table. It was a traditional Tex-Mex meal, complete with enchiladas, tacos, refried beans, and rice. Everything looks delicious, Lillian. Oh, trust me, it is. Mom makes the best food ever. When I was away for college, I'd drive home every weekend just so she could feed me. And she'd always send home frozen meals so I'd have something to sustain myself during the weeks. Lillian rolled her eyes at that. He went to UT in Austin. He could have commuted, but he chose to stay in the dorms. Tiffani grinned at the byplay. It was obvious they were a very tight-knit family. Well, I can't wait to sample your cooking, then. Adam's father stepped into the room then. Hello again, Tiffani. I'm glad you decided to join us for supper. This will be a bit of a working meal, as we will be discussing ideas for the fundraiser next year. We have almost a full year, but you'll need to be working toward it that whole time. We put on a big event so we have enough funds for the following year. Sounds good to me, sir. She couldn't bring herself to use his first name, even if she'd known it. It would have been nice if someone had shared that with her. She knew all 7 of the sons were named after the 7 brides for 7 brothers characters, because that was in the article she'd read. Please, call me Peter. Sir will just confuse everyone. I'll try my hardest, sir. They all laughed at her words. Adam winked at her, letting her know that humor was not only tolerated, it was expected. Good. She'd fit right in here. Where do you want me to sit, Lillian? The table was long, and 4 seats were set at one end of the table. Peter will sit at the head of the table. Let's have Adam sit on his right and you sit across from Adam. I'll sit next to you. Lillian's green eyes sparkled. Adam seemed to be a blend of his parents. He had his mother's nose, but his father's eye color. The shape of his eyes was his mother. He had her dark chestnut hair. His father's strong jawline. Tiffani took the seat Lillian had indicated. Once they were all sitting, Tiffani was astonished when they bowed their heads to pray automatically. It was definitely not something they did for guests. They prayed before every meal. It was refreshing in this world. After the prayer, they passed dishes around and filled their plates. There was no doubt in her mind that eating was as serious around here as praying was. Once their plates were filled and she'd had her first bite of the enchiladas, the question started. Have you had a chance to see the place we put the carnival every year? Lillian asked. I bake pies for it. A lot of ladies at the church make cakes, and we do a cake walk. There's so much that goes into it. Tiffani nodded. I have looked at it. And I have a couple of ideas, if I may. Oh, yes, absolutely. Do you know of anyone who would make a quilt that we could use to raffle off? That's something that could be done every month of the year, or you could have several for raffle at the carnival. Lillian smiled. I make quilts myself. And many of my sisters-in-law do as well. Anytime a baby is born, we'll make a quilt for them. Maybe the 7 of us could sit down and just make quilts for a couple of hours a week. It will force us to get together more often, and we all enjoy our time together. You were one of 7 children as well, sir? Tiffani asked Peter. I was. I have 6 brothers. I'm the 7th son of a 7th son. We don't know how far back that goes, but it's centuries. I've tried to trace it further, but genealogy is not my forte. Peter smiled at the shock on her face. That's supposed to be lucky or something, isn't it? Adam nodded. 7th sons are always supposed to be lucky. Unfortunately, I'm just the first son of a 7th son. Tiffani sat and listened as they told her tales about the family's history. She was utterly fascinated. She'd never heard of a family like this. And she'd grown up in San Antonio. It was surprising word of them hadn't reached her. Chapter 3. After dinner was finished, Adam looked over at Tiffani. I'd love to walk you home, if you don't mind. Tiffani got to her feet. That would be lovely. Would you like me to help with the dishes first, Lillian? Absolutely not. You go have fun with Adam. I know you're still unpacking. I can handle the dishes, you go work on your house. You should have Adam help you unpack. He's good at that. He is? Have you moved often? Tiffani was under the impression he'd grown up in that house. Only for college and medical school. Adam walked toward the door, opening it for her. He must really be the psychiatrist she'd read about. She had hoped she was wrong. A doctor? I'm a psychiatrist. My main purpose is to counsel the boys, and I also run the ranch. Dad still has his hands in, but just a bit. Most of it falls on my shoulders now. Adam wanted to reach for her hand as they walked, but he knew she didn't have the advantage of knowing they'd marry someday, like he did. His father's visions of the future had always been more than a little helpful. I see. Did your mom ever help run the ranch? I understand she did before I was born, but she had 7 boys in 7 years. She stayed home and took care of us. Her beliefs were that it was important for a mother to be with her children. And you have the whole 7 brides for 7 brothers thing happening with your names. I know I read that somewhere. Yeah, well, my mother has always had a thing for that movie. I've seen it hundreds of times because of her obsession with it. When she married Dad, she knew she'd do the whole 7 sons thing, because it's what my family has done for generation upon generation. No girls, just boys. So anyway, she figured if she was going to have 7 sons, she might as well pay homage to her favorite movie. So we're named after the brothers from the movie. Did she really name one of you Frankincense? No, she didn't, but we still call him that anyway. It makes him crazy. Adam shrugged. I can't count the number of times he's clobbered Gideon for calling him that. Gideon? Why only Gideon? Gideon was the only one smaller than him, because he was the second youngest. I used to slip Gideon a $5 bill and tell him to call Frank Frankincense whenever I was annoyed and wanted to see a fight. Brothers do these things. She laughed softly, shaking her head. And you were here on a boys' ranch doing all that. Did your parents ever think of making you live with the riffraff? He frowned. I know you're joking, but please don't call our boys that again. We treat them as if they were members of the family. Mom actually ended up raising 8 boys in our house. There was a Kevin mixed in. How did that happen? Tiffani asked with a frown. Why hadn't she read about Kevin? Kevin was left on our doorstep. He had a note pinned to him that named him Kevin, but that was it. He grew up in the house with us, because he came as an infant. Mom never legally adopted him, because she didn't want it to bother the other boys on the ranch that they weren't legally adopted. He shrugged. I don't know that it would have been a problem, but Mom has always had a lot of empathy. Not as much as me, but she has a lot. What does that mean? You consider yourself empathic? Adam considered his words carefully. He knew she was safe to know the family secret because they'd marry someday. But was it too soon? I am empathic. I need to tell you a little more about my family. She gave him an odd look. They'd reached her cabin. Do you want to come in for a glass of water? We can discuss it now. I'd really like that. He opened the door, going in and sitting on the sofa there in the cabin, waiting for her to bring the water, and thinking hard about exactly how he wanted to explain all this to her. She came back, handed him the water, and took a seat beside him on the couch, making sure to leave an entire couch cushion between them. She was very interested in him, but he was her boss. How she was going to keep herself in line while she worked for him, she had no idea. Tell me about your family. Well, you know about the whole 7 sons for the 7th son in every generation. The first 6 boys don't have to worry about having 7 sons, but the youngest does. Every 7th son has some sort of, I don't know exactly how to explain it, highly developed sense? Anyway, my dad has the ability to see visions of the future. Just little snapshots. He can't control them, though. That's fascinating. But the other sons don't have that? Not usually. Here's the deal though, we're the 7th generation. Every seventh generation, all of the brothers have it. So my brothers and I all have slight powers. Tiffani blinked at him for a moment. And your power is empathy? Adam nodded. It is. I can feel the disbelief washing off you now. He reached over and took her hand. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. We all have something special. Benjamin can make plants grow. He just holds his hand over a plant and it grows before your eyes. Caleb has a sixth sense for danger. He always knows if one of the boys is about to get himself in trouble. She shook her head. People told me your family was weird. I see why now. Because we really believe this stuff? He sighed. You'll see it. Do you want to hear the rest? She nodded despite herself. Yes, tell me them all. Daniel has the ability to heal. He can put his hand over a cut or a bruise to heal it. Now he doesn't have the ability to cure cancer or anything like that, but he can do minor healings. And he can take the pain of something away. He could feel the disbelief rolling off of her, but it was all right. She'd see in time. Ephraim is our animal whisperer. He can communicate with most animals. We realized that was his ability when a rattlesnake rose to strike him and he made eye contact with the snake and it slithered away. He was only 3 at the time. Why haven't you been studied? If this is all real, and I'm still not sure that I believe it, wouldn't the universities be sending people out to study you? Adam shook his head. We don't tell people about it. Even our former fundraising coordinator didn't know, and she worked for the family for 50 years. Why are you telling me, then? He shrugged, looking away. Dad told me you were safe. He couldn't tell her yet that they were destined to marry. Nothing would freak a girl out more than that. What about Frank? Frank has the ability to calm others. He can send out an aura. That's not scientific, but it's the best way to explain it, and all the boys in his vicinity calm down. You'll find that any time there's a fight or argument among the boys, he's called in to calm them. Adam watched her again, now that their future wasn't being discussed. He needed her to believe him, but he wasn't sure why. He'd hidden this for so long, and she was the first person he'd ever personally told. I could see that being very useful here. And Gideon? Gideon's special. He has all of the abilities, to a lesser degree. I can't live among the boys. All of my brothers team up and run the homes the boys live in. I can't, because I can't sleep at night. I am so barraged with the feelings of teenage angst and hormones that I'm overwhelmed. But Gideon can shut off his empathy, which is something I've always wished I could do. He can? I can see where that would be very handy. Tiffani frowned at him. I'm starting to believe you. Does that make me as crazy as you are? He laughed softly. None of us are crazy. He looked down at the hand he still held, running his thumb lightly over the palm. I'm glad you're at least allowing for the possibility that I'm telling you the truth. It matters a lot to me. She looked at him, slightly afraid of all he was telling her, and what she was feeling for him. I bet you were thought of as strange in school. Definitely. We're all 14 months apart, and all of our birthdays are on the 7th. It's just crazy, really. But it's our lives. I never played team sports. I could feel how badly the other team wanted to win, so I'd deliberately throw the game, because they obviously wanted it more than we did. But then I'd feel the disappointment and anger from my teammates. It was always better if I just backed away and played tennis or something, where I wasn't quite as close to my opponent. Wow. I can't imagine trying to live that way. Adam shrugged. It's all I've ever known. In daily life I consider it a handicap, but when I'm working with the boys, it's so much easier to get through to them when I know how they feel. I can see that. Her eyes met his. I can see why you don't want this to get out. People would wonder why you don't just find a way to see the lottery numbers, so you don't have to do the fundraising. Adam felt a slow blush creep over his face. We use the money from the fundraising to make sure each boy has a trust fund by the time he leaves the ranch. The money from our lottery winnings pays for the ranch and our survival. She stared at him with surprise. Then why do you go to all the trouble of your big fundraising event every year? That makes no sense to me at all. It gives the boys something to work toward. Plus, it gives us a real reason for having the money to raise the boys. Everyone knows that our family is independently wealthy from our cattle baron days, but they don't know we get money all the time from lottery winnings. Dad gets flashes of numbers, and we collect the money from it. We've never had a big win and the publicity that brings, but we often win a couple $100,000 per year. Wow. You've given me a lot to think about. She shook her head. I'm not sure how to pull this together now. It'll come to you. You're free to pick my brain on past events. Mom and Dad will both talk to you. Even talk to the boys. Maybe have them put in suggestions for what they think would work. Most of the boys have been here at least a year, so they've seen the event. They look forward to it all year. They don't know what I've told you today. No one does. Dad told me you were safe to tell, so I have, but I want you to be sure not to share that information with anyone. I won't tell anyone. If you need me to sign a confidentiality agreement, I'm more than willing. That won't be necessary. Adam got to his feet. Now, can I help you with your unpacking? I can't ask my boss to help me unpack. Tiffani looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. I don't know why not. I'm more than willing. I thought it bothered you to be around people. She didn't understand his limitations, but she wanted to. If he was someone who hurt when he was around others, then she needed to know about it. I don't mind being around you. He took a step toward her, knowing as he did it, he was making a mistake. He felt for her emotions, but only excitement came back at him. I think you're beautiful, Tiffani. She swallowed hard, looking up at him. The words from 7 Brides for 7 Brothers came back to her as she looked at him. They're all as tall as church steeples. She thought it was Martha who said that, but she wasn't sure. I'm not sure what to say to that. I've never thought of myself as beautiful. He cupped her face in his hands, looking deeply into her eyes. Well, you are. I want nothing more than to kiss you. She blinked up at him, surprised. But you're my boss. I can understand your worry there. We have no rules in our company about it, though, so it's all good. It's not a good idea, though. Even as she said it, she knew she wouldn't stop him if he kissed her. His eyes drew her in, so deeply she wasn't sure she ever wanted out. He sighed. I'm not going to take the decision from you. May I kiss you, Tiffani? All the reasons she shouldn't rushed through her mind, but she wanted him to kiss her. So badly. She'd waited years for her first kiss, never trusting a man enough to let him that close to her. Yes. The word was a mere whisper. She knew it was a bad idea, but it was so tempting. It was like she was diabetic and a huge chocolate cake was sitting in front of her, calling her name. Adam took a step closer to her and tilted her face up for his kiss. His lips just brushed hers briefly, just enough to make her tingle from head to toe. That was a very bad idea, Adam told her, stepping back. He felt her emotions as well as his own, and he walked toward the door, feeling like he'd never be able to take his hands from her again. He felt her sadness following him, but he couldn't stop. Not without grabbing her and never letting her go. I'll see you tomorrow. Tiffani grabbed hold of the chair in front of her, doing her best to keep from wobbling. Her knees were weak. He was something else. But why had he run from her? She sank down onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Whatever was happening with him, he couldn't blow hot and cold that way. It was messing with her mind. After a while, she stood up and set herself to unpacking her things. She at least needed her clothes hanging in the closet before morning. And her coffee pot. She was going to need a lot of coffee in the morning. She went to the freezer when she was done with those two tasks, getting herself a cup of ice to sit and chew, and then she sat down. She picked up her phone and treated herself to one of her favorite shows on Netflix. Sometimes watching the next episode in your current series made all the difference in the world. Asterisk. Adam waited until he was out of eyesight of the cabin and slumped against a building. What had possessed him to kiss her before she knew they were meant to marry? He couldn't just tell her that the combination of their emotions was so powerful he could think of nothing but her. He had to get himself under control if he was going to work with her. Of course, he didn't care about working with her at all. It would be good to have the fundraising in the family, but as far as he was concerned, she'd moved to the ranch to be his wife. He just had to figure out how to convince her of that. He'd always been a strong Christian, and he didn't think premarital sex was good. Tonight was the first time he'd ever been even tempted. He had his morals, and he knew where he stood on just about everything. Never before had emotions rushed through him so hard, forcing him to think beyond his morals. He'd had to get out of there to keep something from happening. He almost understood why they used to use chaperones. Maybe he should have one of the boys always tagging along when he saw her. If she'd ever see him again, he was going to have to explain just how powerfully their emotions had run through him, and pray his hardest that she'd understand why he'd run. What red-blooded man in this day and age didn't give in to his emotions? He took a deep breath and straightened up, heading back up to the ranch house. He had to get himself under control so he could sleep. Maybe his mother would have a homemade sleep remedy if he begged. She usually had some warm milk or chamomile tea up her sleeve when he was having trouble settling down. He got to the house as she was heading up the stairs to bed. Lillian took one look at his face and hurried down the stairs. "Are you all right?" Adam nodded. "She's definitely the one I'm meant to marry." Lillian smiled. "I think I understand. Let me get you some warm milk. Do you want to talk? I can get your father." He shook his head. "No, I don't think I can talk about it at the moment." Sitting at the dining room table, he stared off into space for a moment, while waiting for the milk. Lillian set the mug of warm milk in front of him. "I'll see you in the morning. Sleep well." She stroked his hair from his face. "I've been looking forward to the day you'd fall in love since the moment you were born. I don't know if it's love yet, but it's coming. Love rarely comes first for a man. Good night." He drank his warm milk, willing it to do the trick. He couldn't lie awake thinking about her all night and be productive with her the next day. She was his responsibility, and that's all there was to it. Chapter 4. Tiffani tossed and turned most of the night. She wasn't used to the bed, and she couldn't stop thinking about Adam and that kiss. The kiss had filled her with joy and longing, but his reaction to it had made her feel worthless and sad. Now she had to figure out how she was going to face him. She got up and wandered into the kitchen, turning on the coffee pot she'd prepared the night before, and then she took her shower. She loved long, hot showers. After she finished, she fixed her hair and put on a long denim skirt with a pair of cowboy boots. Then she put on a pink-checked blouse. She looked professional enough to work, but she also looked ready to walk around the ranch. She had no idea what this first day would involve, but she knew she wouldn't be sitting in an office the entire day. After getting ready, she went into the kitchen and poured herself her first big mug full of coffee. She'd drink 2 or 3 mugs before she was finished. She sat down at her kitchen table with her coffee. She never ate breakfast, but she couldn't live without coffee. Pulling up the ranch's website on her phone, she read everything she could about the family and the organization. And then she started researching the 7 brothers. She found rumors about how the family was strange, but nothing anyone could prove. And no one seemed to have figured out the brothers' powers. She made it through 3 cups of coffee as she researched, thinking about everything that had been written. After lying awake most of the night, she realized that what Adam had told her was true. His family was different. She wasn't sure yet if that scared her or excited her. Either way, she would know soon enough. As she walked across the ranch toward the small building where Adam's office was, and where her office would be, she tried to give herself a pep talk. He doesn't hate you. He wanted to kiss you. His reaction was unusual, but nothing about him is like anyone else. Maybe that's how he shows he's interested. When she got to the office, she opened the door and smiled at the secretary sitting at her desk. "Good morning. I'm Tiffani. I'm going to be the new fundraising coordinator. I'm Brittany. It's so good to meet you. I'll show you your office." Brittany, a peppy young girl who didn't seem much older than her late 20s, jumped up and led the way to an office down the hall. Tiffani could see Adam sitting at his desk in the office across from hers. She sat down behind the desk and powered up her computer. Looking around at the walls, she saw that all the pictures were of the ranch and the past fundraising events they'd had. Opening her desk, she had pencils, paper, and everything else she would need to get started. "Thanks, Brittany." "You're welcome. I'm here to help you and Adam. If you have any questions, just ask. I'll make phone calls or file for you. Pretty much anything you need is my responsibility." As soon as Brittany had disappeared, Adam got up from his desk and walked into Tiffany's office, closing the door behind him. "I need to explain about last night." Tiffani shrugged. "There's nothing to explain. You kissed me. I liked it. You didn't." "That's not true." He made himself comfortable in the chair across from hers, his mind racing to find a good way to explain what had happened. "When I kissed you, I felt all my emotions along with yours. I'm used to that, but I'm not used to feeling so much. I'm a Christian, Tiffani. I believe that sex before marriage is wrong, but that one kiss made me doubt my convictions. I had to get out." She blinked at him a couple of times before feeling the heat rise from her neck all the way up to her hairline. "I see. That's why I ran away. I felt way too much. I wanted to feel more and more, and I knew that wasn't a good idea. I'm not sure how to respond to that." He shrugged. "I'm not either. It's definitely outside my realm of experience. But I want to see you outside of work. Soon. Will you go out with me Friday night?" "I don't know. I don't think we should be alone." "We won't be. The ranch does a Friday night cookout for all the boys. They have to take turns cooking during the week, but on Fridays, Mom makes a humongous potato salad. She does brownies and other desserts. We buy chips. And we make a huge brisket, or we make burgers or hot dogs. The boys love the break from their regular routine, and the food is wonderful." "And that's what you want to do? What about s'mores? Does anyone make s'mores?" He nodded. "I'm not sure what Mom has planned for dessert this Friday, but I'll put a bug in her ear. I'll walk you home after, but I won't come in. Being alone with you really isn't an option for me." "We're alone now." Tiffani wasn't sure if he was going to get up and run again. "Yes, but Brittany is in the outer office, and she could walk past and see us, because I left the door open. Also, I'm in work mode." He shrugged. "I'm going to take you around the ranch today, and show you everything you need to know about. I'm even going to show you the cabins. I've found that sometimes it's good to have pictures of the boys' rooms on the internet as part of our website. Can I take pictures of things I think we should include?" "Absolutely. You can't take pictures of the boys, because they're in foster care, but you can take pictures of the ranch and everything here." Tiffani nodded. "I can do that." She was a bit concerned about being alone with him on their walk, but if they were in plain sight of everyone, they should be fine. She had strong feelings for him already. Maybe they were just lust, but they were definitely there. "Let's go, then." He stood up, opening her door. He walked down the hall and explained what they were doing to Brittany. "If we're needed, send me a text." "I will." "Are you going to just show her the ranch? Or take her into town and introduce her to Pastor Stevens?" "I didn't think of that." "Yeah, I'll introduce her to the pastor and others who work for the church. I'll probably take her to lunch while we're in town. Don't expect us back until about 1. "Will do, boss man." As they left the building, Tiffani asked about Brittany. "How long has she worked here?" She and Gideon went to school together. They dated for a bit, but she thought he was too secretive and broke things off. When she graduated from high school, her parents were killed in a car wreck. She has 2 younger sisters she has custody of now. Dad offered her this job immediately, and she's worked here since. So, I guess about 10 years? Maybe 8? I don't know. Close to that. She seems really nice. Tiffani felt her heart going out to the younger girl. She wished she knew how to make everyone's life better. Brittany's very good at what she does. She seems to anticipate my every whim. If I want some filing done, she does it before I come into work. It's almost eerie at times. I think that's a good secretary. I appreciate you sharing her with me." "Oh, definitely. I'm good at sharing." He walked toward the boys' cabins with her. "We have 6 of what we call cabins for the boys. They're really houses, but calling them cabins makes them feel more rustic and ranchy." "Is ranchy a real word?" she asked. "It is now." He opened the door to the first. 6 boys live in each cabin. There are 2 house leaders in each home. This is the one where Benjamin and Caleb work. She thought back to their conversation the day before. Benjamin's power is he makes things grow, and Caleb is the one who senses when the boys are in danger, right? Right. He led her through the home. The boys share rooms. We put 2 boys per room, and try to get boys who are around the same age together. The leaders move houses every 2 months, but the boys stay put from the day they arrive until they move. We try to make their lives as permanent as possible, even though we all know they're in foster care. He opened one of the doors to a bedroom. This room is shared by the 2 youngest boys in this house. My brothers share the master bedroom here. As he wandered through the house with her, he pointed out different things. House meetings are held every Saturday in the living room. The boys bring up any concerns they have, they deal with assigning chores, and they do a Bible study with it. We're a Christian family, and we raise the boys to be Christian as well. She nodded, looking around the area. The house was definitely set up for the purpose of having a group of boys living there. The decor was all very masculine as well. I bet the boys love it here. They all grow to love it. Most hate us when they first arrive. They've been taken from everything they know and everyone they love, and most know they'll live here until they graduate from high school. He shrugged. Our newest boy, Nick, is still in the hating us stage. We're working with him, but he's not a fan of the place. I'm going to take him to pick out a kitten as soon as he gets home from school. A kitten? The boys are allowed to have pets? We actually encourage it. Each boy is assigned a horse they take care of, but if they have a small animal as well, they learn to take care of others. Once you can put another being's needs ahead of your own, it becomes easier to assimilate. You learn to care about people. Not all foster care setups are this way, but we are. Tiffani nodded, liking his reasoning. And where will he pick a kitten from? The local shelter? No, we had a barn cat who had kittens. She came in one day already pregnant, so we'll wait until the kittens are weaned and then go get her fixed. I'm letting Nick pick from the 4 kittens she gave birth to. Is there an extra for me? Tiffani had always wanted a kitten, but her mother had been allergic. Adam grinned at her. Absolutely. You need to learn to take care of a pet too. She laughed. I think I'll be just fine at taking care of it. Come with us then. I'll go get him from his chores around 3 and take him to the cat. He will pick his favorite, and then he'll have to take it home with him. He's an animal lover. That's how we're going to eventually break through to him. Good kid. He just doesn't know it yet. I would love that. Come get me before you leave the office. I want to get pictures of the kittens too. Remember, he can't be in pictures. We'll go over now so you can get pictures of the kittens, but remember, he gets first pick. Of course he does. That makes perfect sense to me. Tiffani would have let him have first pick even if it hadn't already been promised to him. She'd always put her own wants and needs behind those of others. She'd learned from her mother to do so at a young age. Good. He left the house, carefully making sure the door was shut tightly behind him. We rarely lock doors on the ranch, because we want to let the boys know we trust them not to get into each other's stuff. That makes sense. As they walked, she noticed how tense he was keeping himself. She wondered what it would be like if he kissed her again, right there on the ranch, and she felt her heart skip a beat as they walked. Stop thinking about that. Please. He kept his eyes facing forward, but she knew exactly what he meant. Her emotions were coming in loud and clear to him. I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't do that deliberately. I know you didn't. I've never felt this much for someone before, so it's very strange for me. I want to spend all my time kissing you, but we know that's not a good idea after last night. No, it's probably not. What was she thinking? She had work to do, and work didn't include making eyes at her boss. He opened the barn door for her, and she followed him to a stall. There were several cows in the stalls, and she wondered why they weren't with the rest of the herd. Are these cows sick or something? They're all injured in some way. My brother Ephraim is taking care of them, so they're in the barn all day. I haven't met any of your brothers yet. Oh, you will. Soon you'll be overrun with us McClains. He looked around for Ephraim, spotting him in with the kittens. You're about to meet one right now. Ephraim spotted Adam walking toward them and stood. Hey, Adam. And you must be Tiffani, our new funster. Funster? She asked, confused. I like it better than fundraising coordinator. Don't you? I guess I do. She grinned, holding her hand out. It's nice to meet you. You too. He eyed her for a moment. You don't happen to want a kitten, do you? She laughed softly. Actually, that's part of why I'm here. I want to get a picture of the kittens, and then I'm going to come back this evening when Nick gets his kitten to pick out one for myself. Great. Ephraim was obviously pleased to be able to place another kitten. Tiffani knelt in the hay and looked at the 4 kittens, all curled up sleeping against their mother. Did they just nurse? Yes, but they all know how to eat cat food too. They prefer to nurse still, because it's comforting for them, but it's time for Mama to be fixed. Is there a vet in town you'll take her to? There is a vet in town, but I will fix her myself. I have a small surgery here in the barn. Really? Are you a veterinarian? Why do I not know that you were doctors? Are any of the rest of you doctors? Daniel's a doctor. Ephraim shrugged. We have a psychiatrist, a veterinarian, and a medical doctor in the family. Good ways to disguise our gifts. Gifts is a good way to put it. Tiffani grinned over at Adam. You should call them gifts. Makes them easier to understand. Adam grinned down at her. I will call them gifts forevermore. Ephraim watched the two of them, smiling. Dad's always right, isn't he? He is. Adam didn't want the conversation to keep going the way it was. Do you have a favorite kitten? I like the little black and white one. He's so sweet looking. I also like the calico, but not quite as much. If Nick wants the black and white kitten, then I will get the calico, and I'll still be thrilled, because I'll have a new kitten. I'm glad you've decided. It will make things a lot easier when Nick comes down later. Adam held his hand down to help her up. Do you want to get a picture of the kittens? When they're asleep is the very best time. I'm sure they run around like little crazy beasts every chance they get. She stood and used her cell phone to snap a photo of the kittens. Then she took another of Ephraim, holding one of the kittens against his chest and talking quietly to it. She was surprised at the love on his face with the animal. Do you do better with large animals or small? Or does it matter at all? It doesn't matter. They all seem to respond well to me. I don't specialize in either, because I love them all. Ephraim shrugged. It's my gift. Adam looked over at her, taking her hand. He didn't like the way she spoke so easily with his brother. Are you ready? We have a lot more ranch to see today. I'm ready. Let's head out. She followed him from the barn, surprised that he was holding her hand, but she said nothing about it. Let's go see the fairgrounds. I know that's not really the correct title, but that's what we call the area where we have the fundraiser every year. Makes it easier for everyone involved. Sounds good. Chapter 5. At around 11, Adam stopped in his tracks, wiping the sweat from his face. Early October was still a very hot time in the hill country of Texas. I'm ready to give this up for now. I'll finish the tour tomorrow, but I want to take you into town to meet the pastor and his staff. They're the ones who help us with everything. How did you get a church sponsorship? Tiffani asked, walking along beside him to his truck. He grinned. We've had a church sponsorship since we took over the boys. It was back in 1912. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother heard of a fire at the orphanage in Bagley, our closest town. My great-grandmother insisted that she had to have all the boys and take them to live with her. The orphanage was run by the church, but they didn't have money to rebuild, so my great-grandfather agreed, even though they knew they'd have 7 sons of their own. So the church continued to help sponsor the boys even after they moved here to the ranch. That's how the Boys Ranch was born. I think that's amazing. Why was your great-grandmother so determined to take on other people's children? She was an orphan herself. She was adopted by a wonderful older couple when she was in her teens. At least that's how family folklore tells it. I'm not sure how true it all is. I know her name was Penny Sanders, and she loved the boys. He stopped next to his pickup truck and unlocked the doors. She slid in, nervous about being alone with him. How far is it to Bagley? It's a 10-minute drive. You don't have to be nervous around me, Tiffani. I won't ever hurt you. Tiffani looked at him with surprise. Using your gift again? I can't shut it off. I wish I could. He drove out of the ranch roads and headed toward Bagley. We can do our small shopping trips in Bagley. There's not much there, but it's better than nothing. For the big trips, we have to drive to nowhere. Tiffani watched around her, trying to memorize the way so she wouldn't have to ask for directions or get help. When he stopped at the church, she realized he hadn't made one turn. The church was on the same highway as the ranch. Do they know we're coming? She asked. Adam shrugged. No idea. They know I stop in regularly, though, so it won't be a problem. Together, they headed into the church and went to the pastor's office. Adam knocked, and they heard the call, "Come in." As soon as they stepped inside, the pastor smiled. Adam, I brought my new fundraising coordinator to meet you. Of course, Ephraim is calling her our funster. The pastor shook his head. That boy has always been very strange. Not my fault. No one said it was. The pastor shook his head at Adam. I'm Pastor Stevens. It's good to meet you. I'm Tiffani Simpson. I understand I'll be working with you at times. Yes, you will. Is there anything I can do for you now? I'm wondering if you have any ladies in the church who craft. Tiffani didn't see a reason to wait to ask for what she wanted for the boys. The pastor laughed. Of course we have women who craft. What kind of craft are you looking for? Anything marketable. I'm thinking of having crafts sold at the fundraiser. More than that, they'll also be raffled off, making more money. The pastor nodded, smiling. I'll put out the call on Sunday. We have a whole year to prepare, so we can get some good stuff. Thank you, Pastor. Adam will give you my number. If there's anything at all we can do, we're willing. As they left, Tiffani was elated. She loved knowing that she had the full backing of this church. He's so sweet. Yes. He baptized me a very long time ago. I have a lot of respect for Pastor Stevens. Everyone here does. He's a good man. He took her elbow and steered her toward a small cafe there in town. When they walked in, there was a whiteboard with the specials of the day written on it. Chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes and green beans, all smothered in white gravy, was the special that day. They sat themselves at a small corner table that was meant for 4. A waitress brought them the menu, smiling. She was an older lady who was chewing gum a mile a minute. The chicken fried steak is so good today, it'll make you want to kiss the cook. Adam grinned. That does it for me, Miss May. I want the chicken fried steak. And for you? Miss May asked. I'll have the same. And to drink I want ice water, with lots and lots of ice. Tiffani was a bit nervous, and her ice-chomping habit was about to take over. Miss May nodded. Will do. Dr. Pepper, Adam? Is my mama the best cook in all of Texas? Adam's Texas drawl took over when he asked the question. Be right back. Adam reached across the table and took her hand. We're not here as boss and employee. We're here as man and woman on a date, so I'm allowed to hold your hand. I don't know what to say to that. It's God's way of telling you to let me have my way when you don't know what to say. She sighed at him. You're going to be a pain in my backside, aren't you, Adam? I aim to please. His blue eyes twinkled at her. Miss May hurried back with their drinks, putting Adam's Dr. Pepper on the table and bringing Tiffani 2 glasses, one completely filled with ice and the other with mostly ice and a bit of water. Thank you. Miss May looked at Adam. This one has manners. You should keep her. I intend to. Adam looked at Tiffani with a grin. You can't just tell people in town that you intend to keep me. Are you crazy? Tiffani asked as soon as Miss May had gone. He shrugged. The words had been used to describe me on numerous occasions. She shook her head. What am I going to do with you? I can make you a list of suggestions, if you'd like. Remember you're my boss, please. I already told you, I'm not your boss right now. I'm a man taking a woman he's very interested in to lunch. I might not even write this lunch off. That would be silly. He grinned. I'm so glad I've chosen a practical woman to spend the rest of my life with. You can't say things like that. Someone will hear you and think we're courting. She was sure the old-fashioned term fit better than dating did when it came to what the two of them were doing together. Trust me, Tiffani. We are courting. Miss May set their plates in front of them. Eat up now. I don't want to have to call your mama and tell her you didn't eat. After she'd left, Adam leaned forward. She'd do it too. I came here once during the school day, but we had a closed campus. She called my mother and told her I was here, and I was in trouble. I had to wash every window on the ranch before I got my car privileges back. It took me a month. Sounds like you don't want to cross Miss May or Lillian. Tiffani cut into her steak and took a big bite. She's right. This is good enough that I want to kiss the cook. I hope he's handsome. Adam glared at her. Tiffani will not be kissing the cook, he told Miss May. Well, my husband is cooking today, and he's old enough to be her grandfather, so I think it would be perfectly acceptable. Tiffani laughed. I'll do my best to restrain myself. Tell him that I'm sending him air kisses. Adam shook his head at her. Trying to break up a marriage that has been happy for over 40 years. Miss May just grinned. Sometimes the old geezer needs to kiss a young lady to remember what's he got in me. She wandered away with a smile still on her face. I like this place, Tiffani said to Adam. I want to come back often. It's a great little town. I went to Bagley High School. Thank you for sharing it with me. I want to share my entire world with you. You're turning into a great big sap. Have you always been this way? I thought women liked romantic men. Adam sighed heavily. It's like everything I knew about life is totally wrong. It's not. I just feel uncomfortable. I appreciate how loving and kind you are, but I don't know that I can believe the sweetness. Not for me. I've only really known you for 2 days. I want to get to know you better. Is that acceptable, milady? She grinned, reaching over for his hand and squeezing it, realizing it was the first time she'd voluntarily touched him. I suppose it will have to be. On their way back to the ranch, he told her that he'd send her a list of contacts. I don't think it's a good time to continue our ranch tour. The boys will be getting home from school in a couple of hours, and I need to send in some reports to the state on some of the boys. All right. I'd love to have the names and numbers, so I can get everything going. What's my budget for this fundraiser? Can I do it bigger than it's been done before? He shrugged. I think so. We could probably add another 50% to your budget. We prefer that most things be donated, of course. Well, sure, but if I can put a bit of money into it, and we can add in a hay ride or pony rides, charge a little for them. She frowned. I'm sorry. My mind is just spinning with ideas. I can't wait to figure it all out. He parked his truck in the parking lot in front of their offices. You get straight to work, and so will I. I'll see you around 3:30, after the bus drops the boys off. Do you have your own school bus that brings the boys here? He nodded. We always have. There are enough boys coming straight here that they assign a bus just to us. Nice. She slipped out of the truck and walked toward the building. I can't wait for our date on Friday. Neither can I. I am going to show you a good time in front of 30 boys, my 6 brothers, and my parents. Should be fun. He winked at her as they separated and went toward their offices. As she walked past, Brittany called out, Tiffani, I have a message for you from one of the vendors of the fundraiser. He's not sure he can make it next year, because he's been offered a big contract. Which vendor? Tiffani was sure she could find someone else to do the same job without a problem. She had a year, after all. It's the guy who runs the taco truck. The taco truck? That would be like the ice maker being down for the event. No way. I'm going to call in every favor I can to get a taco truck here for it. How would we make it without a taco truck? Imagine. Tiffani hurried into her office and shut the door. Adam looked at her closed door, then at Brittany. I think she must like tacos. You'll have to file that away for future dates. Oh, don't worry. I have no problem doing that. He went into his own office and closed the door, pulling out the folders of the boys that needed reports written. He loved his job, but he sure did hate the paperwork. Asterisk. Tiffani was on her 7th phone call of the afternoon, trying to arrange for the taco truck for the event when Adam knocked on her door. "Are you ready to go look at kittens?" She nodded, finishing her call and standing. "Is Nick here?" "Yes, he is. He's ready to go get his kitten, too." She got up and hurried around the desk. "Well, let's go get a kitten." Nick looked at her. "I get first pick." "Of course you do. You were promised the first pick." "I would have given it to you anyway, though." "Why?" Tiffani shrugged. "Have you ever heard the saying that it's better to give than to receive?" "Yeah, but I think it's stupid." She laughed. "Well, then you can keep thinking so." "I really believe it, though. It feels good to do nice things for people." "Whatever." Adam met Tiffany's gaze. That's his favorite word. "Whatever." Nick didn't realize the irony of him saying it then, but Tiffani had to keep from laughing. "Do you know which kitten you want?" Nick shrugged. "Probably the little calico one." "I like the black and white one." "Well, I still get first pick." "I know you do," Tiffani said. "I'll take whichever one you don't." They reached the barn and Adam opened the door. "Hey, Ephraim. We're here to steal your kittens away." Ephraim stepped out into the room. He'd been somewhere, but Tiffani couldn't really see where. "Come and choose which ones you want." He looked at Tiffani. "Do you know how to take care of a kitten?" "I have no idea. I thought I'd Google it tonight." She was sure it couldn't be terribly difficult. People had kittens all the time. "Then you have to listen to my class about kittens while you play with them and decide which one." Ephraim winked at her, making it clear that the class was really for Nick and not for her. While she and Nick sat on the floor with the kittens and let them crawl all over them, Ephraim went into a lecture on kittens. He talked about what to feed them and how to litter box train them. "Do you know which one you want, Nick?" Nick looked undecided. "Well, I like the calico and the black and white." "I want both." Ephraim laughed. "Only one. Each boy can have one pet, and that's it." Nick frowned. "I'll take the calico then." As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Tiffani scooped up the black and white kitten, cuddling him under her neck. "You're going home with me. What do you think of that?" Nick took the calico and cradled it against him. "Can I take him home now?" Adam nodded, clapping the boy on the back. "I'm going to stay with you as you get him acclimated to the house. I'll go home once Benjamin and Caleb arrive." "Whatever." Adam looked at Tiffani. "Can you find your way back all right?" She nodded. "I have the map you made in my pocket. I'll make it home with no problem." "All right. I'll see you first thing in the morning." "I'd like that." She'd hoped he'd come over again that evening, but she knew it wasn't wise. Of course, being wise wasn't nearly as fun as listening to her heart. As she walked home, she cradled the kitten against her. She was going to need a litter box and some kitten food. She could get those in town, she was sure. At least she hoped she could. She stepped into the house just as Adam caught up with her. "You need kitten food and a litter box. Some cat toys." "I do. I wasn't sure where to go for them, though." "Do they have a pet store in Bagley?" He shook his head. "We'll have to head into nowhere." "We?" "Someone has to hold the kitten while the other one drives." She handed him the keys to the truck. "I'll hold the kitten." "Sounds good." He walked to the truck and slipped behind the wheel, holding his hand out for the kitten while she got into the truck. "When you need the kitten to have shots and get fixed, just take him to Ephraim. He'll handle everything for you right here on the ranch." "Sounds good to me." "That makes it really easy. We're pretty self-contained about a whole lot of things." It makes things easier with the sheer number of boys who live here on the ranch. He drove toward nowhere, knowing the drive like the back of his hand. Family lore has it that our great-grandparents met in nowhere. Supposedly he had a vision when he was 5 that he would marry a seamstress named Penny. So when he found out there was a Penny sewing at the mercantile in nowhere, he made the drive out there, and he met her. He hired her to make him 10 shirts, in a time when men didn't have 10 shirts to their names. He wanted her to be thinking of him. That's so sweet. Supposedly, they were engaged 3 days later and married within the month. Penny and Tom were the ones who adopted all the boys from the orphan home in Bagley. I think it's really neat that you know so much about your family history. It's because we have the whole seventh son thing going on. We like to tell the stories of the people who came before us. Tom was a 7th son. Penny had no problem giving birth to 7 sons, the youngest of which was my grandfather. I really wish I knew that kind of information about my family. She shrugged. She'd never known anyone who knew so much. It was nice to be around someone who was so rooted in his family. Maybe you can marry a man who knows that much about his family. Are you hinting at something, Adam? We just met. When you meet the one you know you're supposed to marry, it doesn't take long. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she cuddled her kitten close and watched as the miles flew past them. Nowhere sounded like a good place to be.